Although The Walking Dead is one of, if not the most successful show of all time, when looking at its full story, there's many moments that are very controversial and could have been detrimental to the show's success. But in order to pinpoint where things started to go wrong, we have to look at one of the earliest mistakes of the show. Number 5, the firing of showrunner Frank Darabont. I'm putting this last on the list since it's a controversial topic discussed by many fans as to whether or not it was a mistake. The reason for this is that Frank Darabont was fired during pre-production of season 2, so his work on The Walking Dead can only be measured in 6 episodes. Still, that doesn't undermine his work because even people who acted in The Walking Dead call Darabont's firing an assassination to the show. And it's pretty obvious to see the changes in the show when comparing season 1 to season 2. Season 1's walkers were much more animated and smarter, doing things such as grabbing rocks and climbing fences. On top of that, the season explored numerous locations and settings, which is the exact opposite in contrast to the entirety of season 2 being restrained to staying on the farm. The reason as to why Darabont was fired was creative differences and budgetary issues with AMC, and these exact differences explain the change in Walker's behavior and why season 2 felt like a reality show. AMC had cut the budget of the show for season 2, and Darabont was no longer able to do what he had imagined for the show for season 2, such as exploring the outbreak of the virus during Rick's coma. When looking back at the firing of Darabont, it's obvious AMC is using some of his tactics in the Walking Dead universe today, like introducing variant walkers in its 11th season, which do exactly what the walkers from season 1 did. But AMC firing Darabont doesn't nearly come as close to the tragedy of what AMC did during season 5 of The Walking Dead, which was the hospital arc. The hospital arc during season 5 was one of the most pointless and boring storylines that led up to a very disrespectful and shocking death of Beth. The episodes consisting of Beth being at the hospital all gave a really weird vibe and didn't even feel like The Walking Dead. The villain of it being Dawn, I still never understood why she acted like she did. But it's not entirely true to say that this is one of the worst mistakes of The Walking Dead, considering that season 5 is a favorite by many, and the whole arc leading up to Beth's death actually gives a different perspective on the apocalypse as a whole. We saw Beth almost leaving, then getting shot right before she could reunite with Maggie, and it made for some amazing character development for Maggie and Daryl. Also, season 5 is statistically rated one of the best seasons, so it's not correct to say this killed the season. Unfortunately, there is an episode that did start the downfall of The Walking Dead, and that was Glenn's death.
Back to it.
Glenn's death is one of the most infamous and brutal scenes in television history. And when you ask pretty much anyone who used to be a Walking Dead fan when they stopped watching, they either say, I stopped watching when Glenn died, I stopped watching at season 7, I stopped watching when Negan came. And statistically, Negan's introduction / Glenn's death did start the downtrend of The Walking Dead, but it doesn't necessarily mean Negan killed The Walking Dead. The show was bound to go down eventually because charts just don't go up forever, and viewers were already annoyed with the cliffhanger they left season 6 on. I personally think this is when people who didn't care about the story of The Walking Dead stopped watching, and it opened up a new era for the show, which is personally my favorite. But Glenn dying wasn't insanely shocking considering he died exactly like he did in the comics, which can't be said for Rick Grimes. Number 2, Andrew Lincoln's departure.
I found him.
Now, when I say this was a mistake, I'm not saying Andrew Lincoln is in the wrong for leaving The Walking Dead. He's from the UK and he was tired of leaving his family every year to film, so he needed a break, which is totally understandable. I just think that the time they made him leave was not the best. He leaves in season 9 episode 5, then a 6-year time skip happens, putting us straight into the Whisperers arc. Right away, this just feels so wrong considering when Rick does return, there has to be an explanation as to why he couldn't return for so many years. Combined with the fact that the Rick and Michonne show is only going to be 6 episodes, it feels like it's going to be super rushed. I personally think they should have done the time skip before Rick died so it feels more realistic. Because personally, I would have loved to see Rick at least see the Whisperers maybe for 1 or 2 episodes. But even if Rick did stay the entirety of the show, it still would feel like something is missing. And that was the relationship of Rick Grimes and Carl Grimes. Number 1, Carl's death. AMC's decision to kill off Carl was the last straw for many regular viewers who even vowed to stay to the end. Combined with the fact that season 7 and 8 were dragged on and mediocre, this was the moment that fans no longer could support the show. The reason as to why Carl was killed off remains somewhat of a mystery, but the main theory is that the production team didn't want to pay Chandler Riggs as an adult since he was fired 2 weeks after he turned 18. Whether or not that's true, I think this decision is one of the biggest reasons that Andrew Lincoln also decided to step away from the show. With the entirety of Rick Grimes being centered around protecting his son, he found it really hard to make the character meaningful. And it was just a huge deviation from the comics since Carl lived until the end. I think this is what fully put the nail in the coffin for The Walking Dead's dwindling viewership, since the show lost its main purpose after this moment. Regardless of all these decisions that AMC made, I still love The Walking Dead universe as a whole. Let me know what you guys think is the biggest mistake of the show, and thank you so much for watching.